It's looking more and more like Jaire Alexander is going to be a Green Bay Packer in 2025. If he is, it will raise Green Bay's ceiling more than any move any other NFC contender made this offseason.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened, they want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Let's start here, and then we will work backward. It does look like Jaire Alexander is going to be back. The latest reporting from Matt Schneidman says Jaire Alexander wants to stay in Green Bay. Sorry, I bit my tongue there for a second. And maybe that's an appropriate metaphor given everything I have said over the last couple months about what I thought and believed strongly was going to happen with Jaire Alexander. And it seems like they are interested right now, or at least they have offered a restructured contract. No resolution there as of yet. I want to get to that part of it in a second. If Jaire Alexander is back, and we need to be able to hold two things true at once. But if Jaire Alexander is back, it raises Green Bay's ceiling more than any move any NFC contender made this offseason. Now, when I said we need to be able to hold two things true at once, what I said back in January was it's really great for the Packers that they were able to have a very good defense without Jaire Alexander, that they were able to blanket the Philadelphia Eagles receivers without Jaire Alexander. And what I have been consistent with all offseason is they don't need Jaire Alexander to be a good defense in 2025. That remains true. If they, change course again, and we need to be clear, that would be what this is again, because they were set in a certain direction and did change course at some point. If they get him back, though, it helps a lot. I don't know if you know that about having good players. It helps a lot. But if they didn't, if they shipped him out or just cut him or whatever, if he was not on the team, I would say, I think this can be a top 10 defense in 2025. We didn't know if that was the case last year going into 2024. We didn't know how much Xavier McKinney would help. We didn't know what the impact Jeff Hafley brings could be. We had a feeling. We didn't know how good Edgerrin Cooper could be right away. We didn't know how good Evan Williams could be right away. We know how good this defense can be without Jaire Alexander. We didn't even really get to see this defense with Ja. Now, I was also someone saying last season that Jaire Alexander's level of play had slipped a little bit. Not from really good player to bad player by any means, but from arguably the best cornerback in the league in 2020 to borderline top 10 corner. On the other hand, having that borderline top 10 corner versus not, even if you're only going to get him for 8 or 10 games, is really useful, having that guy. Now, here's where I understand the Packer fan frustration. It's where I understand the Packer frustration. You don't know if you're going to have him. You don't know if he's going to be on the field. Matt LaFleur, to Kay Adams recently, said, we know he's a really good player. He's just had a hard time staying on the field, and it's hard to make an impact when you can't be on the field. They have sent messages to Jaire Alexander, direct and indirect. Don't forget the leaking to ESPN about, hey, we think there were times he could have played last year and he didn't. That stain is still there. But this is like the gamble you make, especially if the price is going to come down with someone like Kristaps Porzingis. The Celtics do not win the title, in all likelihood, last year without Porzingis. And we saw the difference of that Celtics team when you don't have that guy in a better Eastern Conference against some more full strength opponents. Life got much more difficult, didn't it? Having that guy just raises your ceiling. They can win. Like if they knew they weren't going to have Kristaps, they could have tweaked rotations. And if Jason Tatum stays healthy, who knows? And maybe if it was their first title run, it would be different. You'd have a different level of motivation, a different level of chemistry. You wouldn't have had to pay, Drew Holiday, all those things. But that's not what happened. And so you have one great season and you have him healthy and you win the title. That's what Jaire Alexander can be. A player who, in the biggest games, is the differentiator between winning a game against the 49ers and losing it. Like, Jaire Alexander set the tone, started the game against the Cowboys. Physical, press man coverage, interception against Dak Prescott, and the Packers defense off and running, feasting on that team for the first 2.5, 3 quarters. He is the kind of player who can be an X factor in a playoff game. On defense, how many guys for the Packers have that? Edgerrin Cooper could, Rashawn Gary could. I think a fully healthy Kenny Clark could. But we haven't seen that guy in a couple of years. We haven't seen him take over a game in a couple of years. We've seen Rashawn Gary do it. We've seen Jaire Alexander do it. We've seen Xavier McKinney do it. And to a lesser degree, we've seen Edgerrin Cooper do it. Having a guy at the cornerback position where you can just go, hey, look, we have faith in him to handle his business and not lock down an opposing number one, but not have to shade coverage that way, not have to play all this cover two that they played last year, which was undoubtedly to protect the corners. Just gives you more flexibility, and you need that flexibility in a playoff game. Now go around the league. The Lions lost bodies. I think they're looking net negative. Now, we expected Aiden Hutchinson to come back. That's not really an addition. I'm talking about an addition relative to expectation. In January, February, March, April, we didn't expect Jaire Alexander back. Now we do. Getting that guy back almost becomes like a free agent acquisition. The 49ers, they sent bodies out, not really in, the draft, but the draft right now, we have no idea what that's going to look like. The Eagles, that's all bodies out and coaches out. The Vikings, quarterback out. They brought some bodies in, some nice players in, but they have this huge question mark at corner. None of those guys, or at quarterback, none of those guys raised the ceiling the way that Jaire Alexander could if he's healthy for the Packers. The closest comparable is Davante Adams, but that was already an offense we know was capable at any moment of being outstanding, even without Davante Adams. The problem for them is defense. We have no idea what that defense is going to look like in the postseason. They don't have the guys right now. Adding Davante Adams to Puka Nacua and Matthew Stafford, yeah, it's cool. And giving Sean McVay another toy is cool. But if they can't get stops, it's not going to matter that much. They didn't beat the Eagles because they couldn't get enough stops. Davante Adams doesn't change that, really. Anybody else? The Buccaneers didn't do much such that you think that they're contenders. I know Bears fans are going to, have something to say about Ben Johnson. LOL, you won 5 games last year. Cool off. It's Ja, an all-pro corner that you can bring back into a defense that was already top 10 without him last year. It's pretty great. It's sort of like the Eagles bringing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back, even though he was actually outside of their building. You bring him back, he helps you win a Super Bowl, and then you let him go. And that's okay if that's what happens with Jaire Alexander. If he comes back and plays one great season, or at least one great playoffs, helps you win, even if it's not a Super Bowl, a bunch of games, and then you move on, that's worth it. Now, how did we get to that premise even? That, oh, hey, Jaire Alexander could be back. Well, we've got new information on that front. We'll talk about it next on Locked On Packers. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum swings, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easier to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. This is a great time right now. Eastern Conference Finals, Western Conference Finals. We're going to get what I think is going to be a fun finals matchup no matter what. Live same-game parlays, live prop bets, mix them mid-game based on how the action's going to unfold. Some Tyrese Halliburton, clutch. Look, last 5 minutes, you know he's going to take those shots. Jalen Brunson, last 5 minutes, you know he's going to get those shots up. Plus a $200 bonus bet right now to add to the excitement if that first $5 bet hits. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, $200 in bonus bets straight to you. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. New information from The Athletic's Matt Schneidman that the Green Bay Packers have offered a reworked contract to try and keep Jaire Alexander in Green Bay. Additional context from Schneidman says Jaire Alexander would like to stay in Green Bay, but no resolution has been met as of yet. Let's rewind this, okay? Let's go back to the Bears week when Jaire Alexander guts it out. There had been 2 or 3 weeks in there where it was, can he play, can he not play? Practicing in full, but then not going. And then he goes against the Bears, tweaks it again. We play a little bit more willy won't he, and ultimately the season ends. And Matt LaFleur is growing increasingly exasperated by the questions and seems to be increasingly exasperated by the situation. It is all very weird. And even the team didn't know week to week if he was going to be out there. He would practice. He would say, yeah, I'm feeling better or whatever. And then come Sunday, wouldn't go. And what we got later is reporting from Rob Bukowski from sources inside the team that they believed he could have played. And this was when I thought 100% the door is closed. It's over. You can't leak to the media that a football player is soft, which is basically what you're leaking, and repair that relationship. It just is unfixable at that point. Before that, okay, so let's rewind. So the weird stuff happens. He goes on, season's over, IR. Brian Gutekunst asked about it after the season. It's not the, hey, we really would like to have him back. He's on our team. We'll figure this out moving forward. We just got to get him healthy, and we feel like we've got an all-pro player. Didn't say that. Matt LaFleur didn't say that. Brian Gutekunst said the things that he said about David Bakhtiari when David Bakhtiari was shown the door, and when Zadarius Smith was shown the door. He equivocated. He dissembled. Well, we'll see. We're working through that. All of the opaque nonsense. That's just basically, I'm not gonna give you an answer on this. And that has traditionally been enough of an answer. Every single interview a Packers coach or the GM has given since the end of the season has pointed toward one thing. This is over. Jeff Hafley, who never turns down an opportunity to speak glowingly about a football player, refused to even talk about Jaire Alexander. Not even in like a, hey, look, with this all pro player, I would love to have an all pro player. Give me 11 guys that good. No. Matt LaFleur. Oh, we'll see. I know that Ryan Gutekunst, that Goody and those guys, they're working through that, and we'll see how that plays out. That's a weird way to handle wanting your all pro back. And that's because they wanted at one point to trade him. Remember the reporting from the combine, I was there, that the Packers were exploring a trade. That is usually a sign this team wants to. You get to the point of leaking it because you've tried to trade him, haven't found the right price, and now you're going, okay, we're going to leak this and see what we can shake loose. And I reported at the time that there would be interest. Tom Silverstein later reported there has been interest in a trade. They have not completed a trade. I don't know if you know this. And in the meantime, we got the Rob Domofsky reporting that this is problematic because of the injury situation. The Packers not in love with that. And then we got the reporting that Jaire Alexander, I believe this was from Tom Silverstein, would not take a pay cut. Now, again, whether that was him or his people, usually his agent is going to handle that kind of negotiation. And that was, a logical position. We're not taking a pay cut. You either cut us and we'll make a new deal, or find a trade and we'll play on this contract. But then no trade happened at the draft. And the facts on the ground have changed. And what it seems like happened is, whether it was Jaire Alexander, his people gauging the market that was out there of like, hey, if he comes in, what kind of rework? Because anyone was going to rework the contract. I thought the contract was tradable. I can't say that was the reason he didn't get traded, but my assumption is what he would be looking for is either a reworked contract, an extension, and I would think the team would want that too. The team would want to say, hey, let's lower that contract hit here, but we'll give you some money that we can spread out among the cap. Like, there's just better ways to do it. That's why the Packers were interested in the trade in the first place, right? Now, whether it was because Jaire Alexander and his team could not come to terms on a contract with a new team, or the trade offers just didn't materialize the way that the Packers had hoped. Maybe this was all a big gambit from the Packers. Hey, we'll trade you. In fact, we'll leak that we're trading you, or we're interested in trading you, and you'll see. There's no market here. We want to keep you, but you gotta lower the number. Now, they could have done a better job of selling that to the public if that's what the plan was, which is why I don't believe that was the plan. I think the plan has always been move on. But it got to the point where the market didn't materialize and it became true, and it's kind of always from a logical standpoint been true, that it made more sense to take the gamble on Jaire Alexander, the player, at, if you could lower that to $10 million a year or $8 and then a bunch of incentives, $12 million a year, versus eating $8 or $10 million to have him not on your team. Okay, so you didn't want to pay 18 for Jaire Alexander. Okay. But paying half that to not have him on your team, I don't know, that's not the best plan. Saving money is good, but you'd rather have him on the team. And then there is that, you have to find that Goldilocks zone. Where is the optimal place where the juice is worth the squeeze? And you're comparing it against eating the money to not have him on your team at all. So where is that happy medium? And I think the reality is they never found a trade partner that was willing to pony up the kind of draft capital that would move that, let's call it the contractual Overton window in this case, to find that Goldilocks zone. The more someone is willing to offer, the more enticing it is to say, okay, we'll get the pick to eat this money. But the lower that price is, in terms of what a team is willing to offer, then the more that gap can shrink, because you go, okay, well, what about 14 million? Can we do 14 million, 13 million high end versus just eating the money and getting a 6th round pick? That calculation starts to change. And again, reported by me and others that there would be interest, that there was interest in these trades. We're just at a point right now where it seems like Jaire Alexander wants to be in Green Bay. It was previously reported that if he's going to move on, he'd want to be cut, which makes sense. Then he gets to pick his location and negotiate a new deal. I don't know that that would be the most financially prudent decision, but that was what was reported he wanted. It's always been that he wants to be in Green Bay, though. And that's why, in a lot of ways, this seems like a logical conclusion here. But to ignore everything that's gone on over the last couple months would be faulty. We have to take the reality as it exists. Green Bay was sending every signal to say, we'd like to move on. The fact that it doesn't look like they're going to doesn't mean that that didn't happen. And the narrative around this, the fan reaction to this, I want to talk about that. We'll do it next on Locked On Packers. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camps gets closer and moves are made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. As recently as last week, but I would say going back to November, December, there were fans, social media, even some media people suggesting that this is much ado about nothing with Jaire Alexander. And now that it looks like there is going to be a resolution, that has given license to bad faith actors to point and say, look, the media got this wrong. They were stirring up drama for nothing. This was all, it always made sense to land here. And I will agree with the last part. It did make sense to land here. And in fact, I've made that case at various points over the course of the offseason to say, look, if you can get him to take a pay cut, it makes sense to keep him if you're not going to get something for him. If you can get a 4th round pick, try and do that. Eat the money, get your draft pick, and move forward. It's not the case, though, that because there's a resolution potentially now, that there was never any drama to begin with. That is just an erasure of history. That's not what was happening. So just because in the moment you were going, this is not a thing, and then ultimately the resolution is, well, they figured it out. That's not how reality works. That's not how time passes. That's not how any reasonable human engages in the world. Because there's all this space in between where stuff happens. Let me give you an example. A couple, they're getting a divorce. And as part of the divorce proceedings, there's a cooling off period and you got to do this whole thing. And as you go through the proceedings, start having conversations, maybe you go to counseling, you reconcile and you get back together. Let's call it a couple that you know. It doesn't have to be your relationship. Does it make it not true that they were going to get divorced because they reconciled? No, they were going to get divorced. That is like, by the way words work, they were going to get divorced. And then they didn't. It is not untrue to say they were going to get divorced. They were. So the Packers were going to move on. That was the intention. It was widely reported. That was the intention. They tried to trade him. That was the intention. Sometimes you intend to do something and you end up not doing it. Haven't you ever intended to go to the gym and not? Haven't you ever intended to eat healthy in a given day or a given meal and not? You were going to do that thing and then you decided not to. So I understand there is an impulse among a certain cohort of people to just say, well, the media is full of it. They're just trying to stir drama, all of this. Go back and listen to any answer from any coach or Brian Gutekunst himself about Jaire Alexander over the last 4 months. It has been bizarre if, in fact, this ends with him coming back. Because it was the most tepid endorsement of him moving forward that you could possibly give without actually saying we're moving on. Like damning with the faintest of praise. Even not even praise in some cases, just like, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. That was the answer Jeff Hafley gave. We'll see. I don't want to speak in hypotheticals. We'll just move forward and deal with it as it comes. What? He's an all-pro cornerback. That's not how you talk about an all-pro. David Bakhtiari, all-pro left tackle. Well, we're working through all that and we'll make a decision when the time is right. That's not how you talk about an all-pro unless you're moving on from that football player. That has been how they have handled this situation from the rip. So why would we be surprised if that was the outcome? Why would we be surprised if everyone who had information, knowledge, is saying this is headed toward a divorce, this is headed toward a breakup? It is more likely than not that this is done. Now, I understand speaking in absolutes. Rob Bukowski said 99.5%. I probably said something very similar. I'm sure I have tweets where I spoke in absolutes. It's over. It's done. It's not happening. He's not coming back. Get over it. Part of that, I have to admit here, was in response to this idea that we were just making this up. You have to have your head so far in the sand that it is melted by the earth's core to not see the way this was being handled. The team was saying nothing intentionally, it seemed, because they were moving on. Every action, every report until the last month said this was over. And it was, until it wasn't. And there are situations all the time in life where you make a decision and then the information changes. You are allowed to change your mind. The world is different. It will be different tomorrow when you wake up. You might feel differently about a whole host of things. Why would we not allow a team to change its mind or to change course in some way? Maybe the Packers now believe Jaire Alexander would be open to a restructured contract, and that's what they wanted all along. In fact, I happen to know a media member, I will not betray his confidence, who has been suggesting to me for weeks behind the scenes that is what he thinks is going on. That this was always just a leverage play to get Jaire Alexander to opt into a lower contract. I have floated that idea over the course of this offseason, that's what the idea was, that was really always the goal. I never really believed it. I thought it was possible, certainly, but I didn't believe that was the most likely outcome. it turns out that's what's going to happen, or it looks like that's what's going to happen. So I'm happy to take the L on that part of it. But if there's an 85% chance of rain and it doesn't rain, they didn't get the forecast wrong. If there's a 10%, a 5%, a 1% chance of something happens and it happens, you didn't get the forecast wrong. So I understand there are certain people that are going to take this victory lap. Certain people that don't like the beat anyway, don't like me, don't like Rob Bukowski, whatever it is. There was never going to be any pleasing them. And that just is what it is. But the facts on the ground have changed. And now it looks like the Packers are going to have one of the best cornerbacks in the league on their team in 2025. That's a big deal. And we'll talk about it. We'll continue to talk about it through the offseason. We'll do it, I don't know, if there's more to say, soon. Back tomorrow. Follow me on the socials. Peter_Bukowski on Instagram and Twitter. Follow the podcast wherever you find social media. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to us. Rate, review if you could. And subscribe over on our YouTube page. Watch the videos. We're there. We got shorts coming too. We got those on Instagram, TikTok too. So you can stay locked on Packers.